Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to my bedroom, where right now I'm going to share with you an episode where my brother and I talked about George Floyd and basically what's wrong with society, things of that nature. So let me bring this up so we can enjoy. I don't remember everything that was talked about, so it's been a while since I've listened to this. Okay, there she is. And play. There we go.
Well, hello there, and welcome to Accountability Nation as presented by I'm Only Human, the podcast that attempts to explain how to coexist with other humans. Self accountability is something that will change our world. This podcast strain is Jay's project. We may stay focused on the original topic, or we may drift way off course. Either way, it will be an adventure. Before we begin, we would like to state that we are not experts, and we don't claim to be. We will, however, be talking about a lot of heated topics and some mellow things. It all leads back to taking accountability for your own actions, whether good or bad. Through recovery, healing is possible. We believe that change minds and attitudes can change our world.
Oh yeah, I specifically lived through them. I'm in the Twin Cities, and honestly, the night before, I had in the area where the precinct was that the cops worked out of.
And
I
ladies and
stopped to.
gentlemen, we're talking about the George Floyd riots that happened in Minnesota. My brother had firsthand experience in violence, and he was just doing his job.
Oh yeah, the night before the riots really kicked off, I stopped at a Wendy's a block away from where that precinct was. That Wendy's ultimately was burnt down. The next night, I just stopped to get a sandwich on my way to my girlfriend's place, and I heard people all in the parking lot who were standing out there protesting what had happened, talking about, "Oh, we need to get into that Foot Locker. We need to go get into that liquor store." And then, lo and behold, the next day, someone throws a brick through an AutoZone window. He was a paid agitator. There was people that set up the scenario on this powder keg to light the fuse. There were good citizens of the state of Minnesota in North Minneapolis, which has notoriously got a bad reputation, in South Minneapolis, which to some extent has that similar reputation. And there's good citizens within both of those communities that were protecting businesses that they frequent and used, because they knew that the moment those businesses were burnt down, that they were not coming back and nothing was going to replace those businesses in their communities. Ultimately, we lost several small businesses that are never going to return. A good example of that was over in St. Paul. The business was called the Sports Drome. In their insurance rider, they only had $25,000 in rubble removal, and it cost them over $100,000 to have all the rubble removed from their spot to have their building rebuilt. They couldn't afford the remaining money. That business is no longer in existence, and to this day, where that store sat, it is still just the foundation and vacant. And there's a lot of scars from the Floyd riots that are still in the cities that you'll see to this day. There's small businesses that are lost forever and livelihoods that were lost forever. And it's unfortunate to see that narrative was so important to people that they were willing to pay people to come in and do horrific things. And I feel bad for the communities. I feel bad for Floyd himself. Nobody should ever have to pass away the way he did. There was a lot of responsibility on the Minneapolis Police Department. There's responsibility on George Floyd himself. Uh, Ultimately, though, the aftermath, we're looking at billions of dollars in damages countrywide. There was roughly around 40 people that died in different events that happened throughout the summer attached to the George Floyd riots. There was hundreds of people that were injured throughout those months. And honestly, the greatest transfer of wealth in human history happened while nobody was looking. Small businesses were shut down during COVID, and yet Amazon and Walmart and Target were allowed to be open. And you start looking at some of these things and you go, well, why are they allowed to be open, but these small businesses aren't? And even the ones that were allowed to be open were greatly restricted. And then a lot of them were lost during the Floyd riots to hate agitators and to other people who took on that mob mentality. And you get into these things and you start digging into the nuance of it, and you start to realize that there is people that were going to profit from the destruction, and it wasn't us.
So it was all manufactured. What was the original? Because some people might not remember the whole story, and I don't pay close attention to the news. So can you give the listeners just a rundown of the whole Floyd situation and what sparked it?
Yeah. So George Floyd and two other people were sitting outside of a store on 38th in Chicago called Up Foods. Apparently, one of the people in the vehicle had tried to pass off a fake $20 bill. The cashier said, "No, that's not happening." So the person handed the fake money to George Floyd. He went in and was somehow successful in using that $20 bill. Goes back out to his vehicle and was sitting outside of the store for whatever reason. He had ingested some sort of narcotic at that point, and the cashier had come out to the car a couple of times and said, "Hey, just that's money out of my pocket. That's money for my kids. Like, just do the right thing." And he said, "No, I'm not going to do the right thing." And cops were called. Cops show up. The video is very well played. Um, he was in the back of a cruiser after they had awoken him from sitting behind the steering wheel of his vehicle. And he decided that he didn't want to be in the back of the cruiser for whatever reason. And so they put him on the ground. Well, unfortunately, while he's on the ground, an officer took some liberties that shouldn't have been taken. And the ultimate cause of George Floyd's death, outside of the drugs, was the fact that he was restricted by an officer with a knee on the neck. So neither of the two were right in the situation, and the outcome was not right. Also, the resulting riots weren't either. And I understand the frustration, especially when the narrative's pushed where he was murdered by an officer. And there's some claim to that to be true. There's also a lot of claims to the Minneapolis Police Department having institutional issues that have been proven over the last 10 years. And quite honestly, if Amy Klobuchar would have done her job when she was the Hennepin County District Attorney, those 13 complaints that were filed against Derek Chauvin, any one of them should have cost him his job. He was liable in other situations for lives lost for people that were never prosecuted by Amy Klobuchar. And at any point, had any one of those factors been changed, that outcome would have changed. And this is where the institutional system that we have in place is a real issue. We fundamentally changed the country in horrible ways for a group of people to take more control and to take more of our resources, and then tell us it's all this person's fault or that person's fault. Now we hate each other based on the letter of political backing we follow, or we have groups of people that hate others because the color of their skin or their religious type. And it's all nonsense, and it all could be avoided if we would just change the system.
And politicians don't want that. So the minute people start figuring this stuff out, then another crisis is going to happen. So let's see.
No, there's already a pandemic response team, and after COVID was winding down, which COVID's still a thing, it still exists. People still get COVID and will get COVID for the rest of their lives. It's always going to exist. Well, along comes something called monkeypox, and it took about 4 days for everybody to just laugh the government off as, yeah, okay, whatever, buddy. But out of all this, there is a pandemic response team that is built, and there's a push for the Constitution to be suspended during pandemic outbreaks. So naturally, knowing that, there is going to be a push for another pandemic, and I wouldn't be surprised if we have one before 2024. I mean, I honestly could see them figuring out a way to stop the election.
And be surprised if the next one's more deadly, because after all, a lot might say that we're overpopulated, but the only reason we're overpopulated is because, like you had mentioned on an earlier episode, where all the resources are in the cities, and that's why everyone's going to the cities. If we spread everything out, there's plenty of space for people. I mean, there's plenty of space for a family to just set up, have their own farm, have their own this or that, or their own small communities. Like maybe back in the 1800s, you all do things together to sustain your whole town.
Oh, there absolutely is. But the reality is it's a lot easier to control people when they're in a dense populace. On top of it, let's educate them to believe that the government is the end all be all. And you build those mentalities into people, and all of a sudden you have your control. And there's been conspiracy theories out there. I don't prescribe to a lot of them. I say some of them could be plausible because I can't discredit the idea without the proof completely. I also can't back the idea without the proof completely. The conspiracy theory is that the elites would like to reduce the population of the world down to 500 million. We're gonna breach 8 billion people on this planet by the end of 2024 or 2025, if I remember correctly. It's somewhere in that area, and they don't want that. I mean, they want the resources for themselves and the people that they choose. So one of the things that's happened in the last couple of years, I don't know that people understand. People that homestead and people that grow their own food are now labeled as domestic extremists because they want to be self-sufficient and live by their own means. And that's an unfortunate label to give to somebody. I've been considered a domestic extremist because of my political views. I personally believe that no government should have the right to tell us how to live within reason. I mean, much past violating the non-aggression principle, government really serves no purpose. So I've been labeled a domestic extremist because of that. And it's ridiculous that the fact that I believe we should all have equal right under the fact that we are a living person until we violate somebody else's ability to live safely. It shouldn't even be a question, but yet it is.
Yeah, one of these days we're going to go over the Constitution little by little, and we'll discuss it in great detail. I'm not a lawyer, you're not a lawyer, but it's good to get like a perspective of the common folk. I think what they're feeding us is crap, and I don't really want to swear too much on the show, but they're feeding us all this stuff and we're just eating it up, and it's sickening. I'm tired. I'm tired of it. I just want to pull the curtain back and say, look, we're all being controlled by this little tiny thing here, which is pretty much what it is, a Wizard of Oz, the guy behind the curtain. It's all feelings, it's all emotion. We all got to get over ourselves. I'm getting all irritated now, but I mean, this stuff fires me up.
And it should, because we live with this reality. People's truth is based on the information they consume. The truth is no longer the truth. The truth is their accepted narrative. And that should never be the case. The truth should always be the truth. The reality is the truth isn't profitable, and you can't control people with the truth. So what's the first thing you want to do if you're trying to control a group of people is wipe out the people that you deem to be an adversary of your narrative.
And then keep everyone else afraid. afraid of, success.
Yeah.
Because all anyone wants
mean-
to do is survive in this world. I mean, people who are asking to increase minimum wage, it's not so they can become wealthy, it's so that they can survive in this world, just like anyone else wants to do. We all got to do our parts, but with like corporations, they just want to push more our way. And it's sickening the way we're badgered, not only in the United States, but I'm sure like in China and Japan, they're probably badgered all the time with sales and stuff like that.
Oh, it's absolutely true. There's no such thing as capitalism anymore. We live in a corporatist society. The only real solution to solving a lot of these problems is returning to the free market and letting the free market dictate a lot of things. Like, let's take healthcare for an instance. We are the most regulated country anywhere in the world when it comes to healthcare, but yes, we have the highest cost. That's by design. People are like, healthcare is a right. No, healthcare is a service. We have the right to live. We don't have the right to goods and services. I mean, a lot of this started to spiral out of control back in 2008 when the Unaffordable Care Act was put into place, as I call it. I mean, everybody's like, Obamacare, this is so great. No, what it ultimately did is it started crippling our ability to have reasonable healthcare cost, because we were forced to purchase it. And if we didn't purchase it, we were penalized, which is a violation of commerce. Unfortunately, when it went to the Supreme Court, it was the year before the election was coming up, Obama's second term. And what was stated was, we can't take away a sitting president's greatest domestic achievement in an election year. So politically speaking, it was allowed to stand based on the fact that it was a creation of a sitting president and it was his greatest domestic achievement, which that domestic achievement screwed we the people pretty hard. And it wasn't until the next administration that that penalty was removed, ultimately crippling the Obamacare as we know it.
In closing, we would like to say that the opinions expressed here were strictly of our own making or by some guests. Take what you like and leave the rest. You may come to realize that you may not like us or what we want to share, but let's talk to each other, reason things out, but let there be no gossip or criticism of one another. Instead, let the fellowship of ethical human behavior and the serenity from positive human interaction help you grow and chill out one experience at a time. We would like to thank our higher powers for guiding us through this podcast. We hope to spread the message of love, hope, and understanding by touching one life at a time. If you like this podcast, please like and share it. Comments also help other struggling people find it. We are now listener supported, and if you would like to contribute, please feel free. There is no obligation. If you would like to share feedback, you can email Jen at averagehumanbeing1875@gmail.com or visit Jay on Twitter at earbudsmusic. There is also a link you can click if you would like to send a voice message and add to the content of the show.
Okay. Ooh, I can just wait. I can't do that. Hang on. Now I have to listen to this. Okay. Pause. Okay, let's go back here now. Okay. So there it was, Jay and I talking about George Floyd, like political things and stuff like that. I got to get running. I'll see you again for the next episode. Yeah, I didn't really have too much more to add to this one. All right. Bye.